It's Wednesday morning, Lagos. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Now, the 2020 Lagos State budget is ambitiously 34% higher than the previous one, with capital expenditure at 62% and recurrent expenditure, I believe, 38%. Yesterday, we reported on TVC News a press briefing that featured the breakdown. This morning, we intend to bring out a magnifying lens to take a second look at the figures. After all, it's the economic plan for Lagos, the city we all came to blow, right? So, Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget is here. Sam Ikube is joining me this morning for budget breakdown. We're going to look at implementation strategy, issues around taxation, especially now the state government has projected a total revenue of 1.071 trillion naira. Good morning and thank you for finding time to come.
Good morning.
It's a very impressive CV you got there. So from civil engineering to top management job in banking, consulting, and now you're commissioner for budget. But I'm inquisitive. Is it accurate that you were once a commercial bus driver in Lagos?
Oh, certainly. Sometimes you go through ups and downs in Lagos. And so there were periods where I was within jobs. And sometimes to make ends meet, I had to drive commercial buses.
That was long after you finished from school?
No.
Okay.
I had started working. I had moved up in life.
Wow.
And I made a career change, and life took a turn.
If you are now commissioner, that means I can be governor one day.
Certainly, certainly.
All right, so in the local parlance, they say the only way you can tell that Sunday will be great is taking a look at Saturday. Let's begin with just how well the 2019 budget has fared. Sometime last year, Mr. Governor approached the State Assembly because there was need to source for funds to implement last year's budget. So we saw an approval of a fixed rate bond of 100 billion naira from the capital market, an internal loan of 150 billion naira. What percentage of implementation did we record as at December 31st last year?
Okay, the December numbers, as you know, we just closed December. It's our expectation that we'll get, as I did promise, that we'll get in the mid-to-high 80s. But as at November, the budget performance was 73%. There are several execution shifts in strategy that we engaged in the last quarter that gives us good reason to believe that when the numbers eventually close out, we shall be in the mid-80% performance.
Did some of the execution spill into the new year?
Well, projects are continuous. So it depends on whatever you expect to do in 2019, you deliver it and you are measured on that performance. Some of the projects, of course, are moving off, of course, into the new year. As one of our budget objectives is, which is really to ensure that ongoing projects are given significant priority. So, yes.
In 2019, the state had projected a total revenue of 775.23 billion naira, out of which 606 billion naira was expected from internal generation. How exactly did that fare? I'm concerned about the IGR last year.
Okay, so the IGR fared just right, a little bit moderated downwards below our expectation. And basically, because there are a lot of things that need to be done to get IGR out. A lot of people are not within the tax net. We are deploying a lot of technology which will come on stream. There were certain tax channels which were not activated last year. Issues around Land Use Act, issues around the consumption tax, which we have kind of resolved and are resolving. And we believe that those should kick in a manner that will be very much welcomed by the society. So that performance on LRS was, I would say, very good, but below what we had expected to happen.
Let's stay with that for a bit. Now you've shot the projected IGR to over 1 trillion naira. Some will say that's very ambitious, but on the other side, they will say, well, it's Lagos. Lagos should be able to even turn in much more than that. You're mentioning now that a significant percentage of this IGR will be contributed by the Lagos Inland Revenue Service through expansion of TaxNet. But just last year in November, you put the total number of taxpayers in the state at about 400,000. That's roughly 2% of the total Lagos population. What miracle are you looking forward to perform to increasing this number in the new year?
Okay, so last year when I talked about the 400 number, It's a number that has to do with effective taxpayers. The reason is that the actual numbers is much more than that. But a lot of people, you want to do a transaction, you come into the tax net and drop out of the tax net again. So effectively, you're not an effective taxpayers. Now, it's about organization, right? If you organize the society in a manner if you organize the society well, then the tax points, or what you call the gray areas, will come into the open. Today, there are a lot of areas which Lagos State is known for, right, as significant in our economy, that are not well accounted for in the tax stream. So if you take, for example, they say our oil is real estate, and you take the transactions going in the housing market, a lot of all of that are not well documented. We are also known for markets. Lagos is one big market, right? And that is an area also that is clearly declared as informal, right? Look into our transportation market. With 14 million people moving every day, that entire system is also opaque, right? So for us in Lagos State, all we need to do is organize our communities, organize our businesses, organize the systems, and we'll use technology to do that. Once we're able to organize those systems, then we'll see the capacity, and we believe, given the data that we have, that we can significantly increase our revenues from taxes just by getting people into that net.
1.071 trillion naira, and lots of it you're expecting to get from IGR. Does that mean in any form that Lagosians already paying tax will have to pay more in this new year?
So it's not about increasing tax rates. It's about paying correct taxes, right? So as we move into the new year, what will happen is that people would begin to pay what they should pay. And that is what we shall strive to do. To do that, really, you need a lot of information, and you need a lot of data to be able to do that. You need a lot of advocacy and a lot of convincing. And also you need a lot of partnership. The society is organized in a particular way, and there are channels of communication that the society will respond to. And we hope to use all of those channels to persuade Lagosians that we need to do the right thing at all times. And also, they will be seeing a lot of development going on at the same time. They will see their tax money in action. And it's our big expectation that they will respond with hands wide open to the idea of social and civic responsibilities.
Are you in any way concerned about the implication of your new tax drive on the ease of doing business in Lagos? We understand that the city had excelled last year based on World Bank's rating. So if people now have to pay tax that is due to government, is there going to be any shift in that number this year?
So just look at it from a different angle. So if you look at Ghana, for example, right, their tax to revenue, their revenue through GDP is about 15%, right? Lagos is about 1.06%, right? And you hear a lot of rave reviews on what's happening in Ghana, right? In Nigeria, we've moved up significantly in the ease of doing business indices, right? And that is driven largely from Lagos. Lagos has a very big input into that. So paying of taxes, right, is not synonymous to low ease of doing business. What constitutes challenges is when you begin to talk about things like double taxation and all that, which is not existent in Lagos.
So the average Lagos businessman today will tell you that they pay for TV radio tax that the local government asks for. There's a trading permit, there's the billboard tax. Most importantly, the huge amount of money that bus drivers, taxi drivers, Okada and motorcyclists pay to the boys. Where do all of this money go to?
Well, if you pay to the government, then it will come to us, right? If you pay to your unions, then it will go to your unions. So what you pay to your unions or your associations, I'm a member of several organizations which I pay levies and dues to. That will not count as taxes because it's not going to government, right? But there are taxes that are defined by law, right, and are due to whether it's local government, state government, or the federal government. And a lot of these taxes, of course, the ratios I've just given you show that we pay far, far less taxes than even the more developed societies like the United Kingdom and societies in the West, right? I just told you the amount of revenues per GDP that we get out of Ghana here. And it shows that we are not yet scratching the surface, which is why we feel that the tax rates as we see them are reasonable, but there are just few people participating in that. And we believe that through a proper engagement of our citizens, they will see costs to take on the responsibility.
You know, we can only begin to imagine how much money the transport unions take from all of the drivers. Are you planning to take some of those money as tax?
Well, whatever they take from the unions will take from their members is between an agreement between the union and their members. Our entire tax systems and mechanism is not connected or derived from what unions decide to charge themselves as an organization.
Very interesting. So according to you, the budget deficit of 97.53 billion naira will be financed by domestic loan of 63 billion, external loans of 34.5 billion. By domestic, you mean loans from
loans
within
from
the Nigerian
local
public?
banks. Yeah.
From local banks here.
Yep.
What's the interest going to be like?
Well, Lagos State today has one of the best interests that you could get. We have under 14, right? It is because of our high rating, it's because of our high credibility, but it's also because of the level of transparency and accountability that we have in Lagos. The World Bank just declared recently that we are ahead of most states when it comes to our transparency, accountability, and sustainability matrices. And it is because of that we're able to negotiate great terms for Lagos State government.
Do we know who the foreign lenders are as regards to 34.5 billion naira?
Well, these are arrangements that you will go through and implement in the course of the year. Of course, we're talking to various multilateral lending institutions like the World Bank, the DFID, and AFD, and all of those in that class, right? We're talking to banks like the China Exim Banks and all of that. So all of these guys in AFC will definitely play a role, right, in going forward in 2020.
So you are the banker. Perhaps you will help us understand just how sustainable the money Lagos is borrowing is and what it says about our innovation when it comes to IGR. So according to the National Bureau of Statistics, as of last year, Lagos total debt profile had risen to 1.04 trillion naira. Does that scare you?
Well, as a banker, it doesn't scare me. And the reason it doesn't scare me is you are not concerned primarily around your debt position. You are concerned about what you use that debt to deliver to the people.
But that's roughly the total figure of this year's budget.
Yeah, but when you look at it against your GDP, and the more important thing is your debt service, right? So if I have $1 trillion naira in debt and I'm paying over 20 years, it's not the same as if I have $1 trillion naira and I'm paying over 5 years. So when you look at our sustainability matrices, as at 2019, we were at 29%. In 2020, we should have gone down to between 22 and 25%, which is well below the debt service sustainability of about 30%, which is expected. So we have negotiated our loans in a manner that will remain extremely sustainable. And with the investment which we'll be making in capital expenditure and in infrastructure, that will again go further to stimulate economic growth and stimulate and support increases in our revenue profile as we go ahead.
So as a banker, you're saying Lagos is still in the green?
Very, very, very well.
And we can still borrow more?
We have capacity and headroom to borrow more.
Let's attempt a sectoral analysis of this document. So the education sector got the highest allocation, 136.1 billion. That's 70.4 billion naira higher than what was recorded last year. And that's very impressive. I haven't done the maths, but it's close to the 15 to 20% budgetary allocation to education, the minimum allocation recommended by UNESCO. What should Lagosians expect?
Education is going to be pretty exciting. We started out knowing that we needed to push the envelope and we hope to push it over the years of this administration higher. At the foundation of our education system is the early education. If you are properly trained as a young child, right, you have a better chance of doing well. And so we've flagged off what we call the Eco Excel project, which is basically leveraging technology with our early education systems to train the teachers, to ensure that we give teacher guides as they teach, to improve the standard and ensure that it's the same standard everywhere, and also to be able to administer, right, the entire teaching and education system in a manner that we get better outcomes from our education. So the students have been delayed in their resumption. That's because we're training quite a significant amount of teachers right now in preparation for its launch, which will be pretty soon. And Lagosians will be excited when we do launch that. It's also important that we look at also our secondary education and ensure that we push the pass rates in the WAEC and in their exams upwards, right? And those are the things that the investments will be going to ensure those outcomes are stronger. To do that, the environment in which our children learn, right, needs to be very conducive. So we're starting out in the first phase with 300 schools to basically rehabilitate and to retool them, retool their science laboratories and equip it and get started.
How evenly distributed are these schools across Lagos?
Well, typically, in the way we would like to move is a political environment. Okay. So we will engage across the 3 senatorial zones and ensure that this impact comes upon every geographical divisions in Lagos as will be required.
So it's very good to hear that we're not just looking at infrastructure development, we're also investing in the quality of teaching that takes place in this school. I'm sure you'll be aware that Nigeria still contributes to the largest number of out-of-school children. So what is government doing such that while all of these monies are being spent, we're ensuring that indeed all of our children are in school? Okay.
So for planning purposes, you need data all the time. Right, and you need to know who is where and who is around. So in the budget, we've invested quite a bit in LASRA, right, to ramp up our residence enumeration system so that we know our people, right. These investments which we're making right now in the schools, in the early education system, will also give us a lot of data that will help us track exactly what's going on, which student is in school, which one dropped out of school, which one is changing school, and so on and so forth. So data is going to be very important. But when you talk about dropping out of school, one of the issues that make people drop out of school is they get to a point in their life where, one, they are unable to see clearly how the school connects with employment. Right? So in terms of defining what we want to begin to do, we want to begin to train a lot of people and connect them to industry. And what that means is that we're going to partner with the industry. We know what they require. So if our universities, all they do right now is theater arts, right, preparing people for stage activities. Meanwhile, the film industry is growing tremendously. We want to make adjustments to that curricula to connect, right? If technology is beginning to, is as we see it, is strengthening, then we want to begin to fast track the exposure of our children to technology so that they become even more relevant. The people at the end of the day, that the organizations that at the end of the day that determine what makes schooling exciting is the industry, is the demand that people place on education outcomes that make education very interesting.
How reachable are these goals in the short term? Because when you begin to talk about the ideology behind the Nigerian education curriculum, it's a big deal. I mean, the fact that they will tell you that, what are we still doing with grammar schools when we now understand grammar? How relevant is what these children are being taught to real life experiences? Is this an issue you think that Lagos can champion in the meantime?
So Lagos is championing it right now. We are working with our institutions as we went through even the budgetary process and engaged the various schools. I mean, it's clear the direction in which we are going, right? In the short and medium term, there are going to be results, but education is continuous. And one of the challenges you face in development is you drop the ball on a long-term range because you are looking for a short-term outcome, right? That's not what we will do. We have our eyes on the long term. As you know, Lagos State has a 25 years development plan, right, which we execute on a rolling basis every 3 years, right? And that is exactly what we will do. So there are partnership on the technical education side that we shall drive. There are solutions going on, as I said to you, in the early education. Of course, early education, you wouldn't see the WAEC result until sometime later. But we know scientifically that if the children are strong at their foundation, their outcomes will be good. So we will certainly see results in the short term, and you will hear about it. But we shall also see results in the medium to long term as we begin to improve our learning programs, as we begin to improve the scope and access to education, and begin to use various techniques for educating our people, because education really is not just about the four walls. People must be able to access it using technology. In Lagos, we are building a broadband metro fiber infrastructure around Lagos for 3,000 kilometers. All of that, when it's deployed, you begin to see a lot of e-learning going on. You begin to see a lot of open education systems going on, or open courses going on to teach people things that focus them very directly and deliberately on what is required.
It sounds very good on paper. So we've heard you say there's so much investment going into quality of teaching through what you're doing with the teachers. There's going to be massive infrastructural development in that light. And you're also looking at revamping the curricula to make it a little bit more relevant. Let's talk about remuneration for teachers. I want to assume that the new minimum wage is captured in this document. But there are some who are saying that, come on, Lagos is the big brother. Lagos can do more, way ahead what even the federal government is recommending. What are your thoughts around this?
Okay, so Lagos is the center of excellence. We are not only good on paper, we're also good in reality. When I talked to you about the education system, I told you what we're doing right now, that teachers are in training right now. We're training thousands of teachers right now. So first, in the planning, you must be good on paper, and we are good on paper. Second, you must be good in execution, and we are beginning and executing on all of those plans, right? So it's important that we understand that your words mean nothing if you do not see it on the execution side. Now, Lagos also is ahead, right, in terms of the minimum wage consideration. We had approved about 35,000 minimum, which is ahead the national average. States are still arguing as to whether to pay or not, but we've gone ahead. And that is the spirit of Lagos.
So we've gone ahead 5,000 or more?
Certainly.
Okay.
Right? We've gone ahead to do that. But Lagos also constantly moves the bar and constantly moves the challenges. So when it comes to remuneration, and you have to look at it from holistically, apart from just the pay they get, you also have to look for how much cost savings you help the teachers achieve. So we're looking at, even in administering our teacher population, we want to see if we can get them closer to the schools they are teaching, so their transport cost is technically reduced. We are looking for solutions around housing and things like that to just help reduce the cost, so that what the take-home pay becomes much more than just what they receive, because you could actually increase the salary and their cost of operation gets higher, and so their take-home pay gets less.
I understand you precisely, but you know, when I mentioned being good on paper, I wasn't rubbishing your efforts as a government. I'm just saying that, you know, for instance, we're talking about the budget. You know, it's one thing to have a fantastic document. Implementation is a totally different ballgame, because it would take us to now have this conversation in December to say how our government has performed in that light. Let's move very quickly to roads and infrastructure, which got second highest allocation. That's 117.248 billion naira against 31 billion naira expended in 2019. Is that figure actually accurate? 31 billion naira last year?
Very accurate.
I mean, that's a whole lot, I mean, compared to what was done last year.
So what you will understand is that last year was a transition year. And so typically with transition years, there's technically a slowdown, which was one of the reasons we went to the House of Assembly to reorder the budget and then to ramp up quite quickly. So these are November numbers. As at December, these numbers should have gone higher, which is why we say we should be able to achieve about 80 and above performance as at December for 2019.
Interested. So it looks like we're turning Lagos into a workstation. You know, I spoke with the deputy governor a couple of days ago, and I was saying, how do you intend to have a lot of work done in Lagos without affecting the quality of life per se? Help us understand how this money will be spent and in what strategic manner will this infrastructure development take?
So, yes, it will be like a work site, but it's an intelligent work site where we will take into account the mobility of the citizens as we go, right? So it will not be the kind of work site that will leave everybody in a logjam.
That's right.
Right, so that is one. The second thing is, when you look at infrastructure, appropriate infrastructure development must be targeted at an outcome. So one of the outcomes is to get roads into places where it will unlock the economy, where it will create access to economic or socially viable outcomes. So one of the things we'll be doing is road maintenance. First of all, to ensure that the roads are properly maintained, and the governor did flag off a zero pothole policy and have equipped the PWC to do exactly that. The second way is to then activate link roads. In other words, you are not doing a road that links to nowhere. So every road that you put on the table ensures that it helps redirect traffic, right, in a manner that your traffic flow gets to improve. So that, again, a lot of funds will be going into doing link roads and activating all of that. So that's exactly how these monies will be spent. Now, there are also major projects that we are pushing forward. For example, the Badagry Express road, which we expect in another 9 months to get to the last point. That is a 5-way each way highway which will connect to the entire West African corridor, right? We are focusing on ensuring that that is aggressively pursued, right? We have the Shower Road in Ikorodu that was a mess for quite a while, and then the Gbogbo Road as well, which we would address. We also want to complete the Pensinima Overbridge, right, which we, Mr. Governor, went to look at. We expect that by June, that also should be completed.
Let me just quickly chip this in. So we are told that government is supposed to be a continuum. How much of the projects from the previous administration are being continued, particularly, you know, towards the end of the Ambode administration? We saw some beautiful bus stops built across Lagos, and then he promised to also bring in some buses as well. Are these captured in this budget?
Everything. Like we said, the budget, in terms of the budget objective, prioritizes ongoing projects. So a lot of these projects I have just talked about are projects that came out from the past administrations, and we want to complete them. We are pursuing the blue line, and we'll complete it, right? We'll soon trigger out the red line, and we'll go ahead to complete it. So the government is a continuum, and you will see it in everything that we are doing.
So there's this massive construction taking place along the Oshodi axis. How long more is that going to take?
Are you talking about the one being done by the federal government in conjunction with Lagos from Apapa
No.
all the way on?
There's this one from the airport.
Is it the airport?
Yes, yes.
That is almost completed. We're just looking at doing some overhead walk pedestrian bridges across. So we are primarily at the end of that project. And I'm sure you like it.
Yes, but we'll talk about this subsequently. Let's take a short break now. When we return, we'll open the phone lines and also talk more about this interesting document and look at some further sectoral analyses as far as the 2020 Lagos budget is concerned. Stay with us. Don't go away. Sam Ekube is the Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget in Lagos State. He told us earlier about his journey into where he is right now. I mean, I'm surprised to hear that he was once a commercial bus driver. I mean, that gives Lagosians a lot of hope that anything can just happen in Lagos. It also tells us why a lot of people are trooping into Lagos every year, year in, year out. The governor recently said that there's absolutely nothing he can do about that. But are you worried about the influx of people into Lagos?
So people, when you look at people are the greatest advantage that the world can give. Now, what you have as a problem is if those people, that population is unproductive. If the population is productive, then it makes the entire economy very, very buoyant. So while we might be challenged by the influx of people into Lagos, the true challenge is not in the influx. Okay. It's in converting that population into a productive machine to favor the development of Lagos.
So you looking at the budget, it's 62% capital expenditure, thereabout, and 38% recurrent expenditure. It is a feat that we're yet to achieve at the federal level. The challenge of having a recurrent more than capital. What's the implication of this on the viability and, you know, the prosperity of this document?
So it just shows the quality of the government of Lagos State, right? The whole idea of ensuring that we get up to 60-40 or 61-39, as this budget does say, it's not something that started today. It's part of our basic governance framework from the past, right? It's always been targeted as a matter of fact to stay the capital expenditure ahead on the upper side of 55%. And this time we're doing something like that, 61 capital expenditure. What it shows, it speaks to development. It speaks to our deliberateness around development. It speaks to the fact that we intend, because one of the objectives of the budget is, first of all, to attract investment, right? And you can't attract investment if your infrastructural positioning is on the wrong foot. And that's why we need to focus quite heavily on our capital expenditure. In terms of viability, it's a matter for execution, right? How well, I mean, it's easy to execute on recurrent. Every month you just pay. That's right. Right? But on the capital side, you have a procurement act, right, that you need to comply with. So there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. So sometimes when we were complaining at the beginning of this administration about the fact that we're not moving, there's a lot of planning that goes into execution, and you cannot begin to plan the execution until you come into government. But a lot of that planning is gone ahead. The other thing also is that there's a brought forward amount in the budget and under capital receipts of about 175 billion, which was a strategy, a deliberate strategy we implemented to ensure that we have a head start in January. Okay, so we're going to have a head start. Our execution systems, right, is primed. We also have a digital methodology of managing the performance of MDAs across board. So we are ready for it, and therefore it's a viable proposition which we are making.
Let's turn our attention very quickly to the health sector. The third highest allocation, I believe, 111.775 billion naira. What is the strategy this year?
Okay, so it is easy to talk about health from health, but actually our health initiative starts from our focus on the environment. Okay. So when you look at the team's agenda, you see that health and environment comes together. First of all, to prevent people from being sick, and then to go ahead to ensure that when they are sick, they have access to healthcare. And in that area, access means from wherever you are not too far from a healthcare facility. So we'll be focusing a lot on our primary healthcare system. We'll be remodeling it and make it fit for purpose. And that entire system has gone off the score, and we are implementing right now. We have the basic designs for those remodeling to happen. But there are two sides to health accessibility. One, apart from the infrastructure you have, and in terms of the healthcare workers and the rest, making them comfortable enough, which we will do, is also paying for that service, which is why the entire health insurance scheme is crucial to us. The government will be making seed investment into that entire scheme, and we employ Lagosians to participate in that scheme, not just for themselves also, but for the entire system.
How do Lagosians access that?
Well, you just register. It is, I think, about 40,000 per year for a family of four. Okay. Just participate in it. It doesn't matter what level of healthcare you're currently getting. See it as both a contribution for yourself and also for the vulnerable in our system. And the government has put in money also into that because not everybody might be able to pay that, right? But as many people as should just participate in the Lagos State healthcare insurance scheme so that we carry our people. If our people are well, then they have the chance of being productive. And if they are productive, then they can lift up the economy of the state.
Are there particular construction works as regards health facilities that Lagosians should expect in the course of the year?
Oh, certainly. We've launched some already. The mother and child healthcare centers, we intend to go on doing that. We intend to, so again, the plan is not to, we have quite a number of primary healthcare centers. We just need to make them better places, more fit for purpose and better equipped. It's not the multiplicity or keep on building new ones, but ensure that the ones you have, which are a lot and enough really to improve. But where there are gaps, we would flag up construction also for new ones.
Let me hold you shortly to take George's call from IKEJA. Good morning, George.
Nifemi.
Good morning.
Good morning to the commissioner.
Good morning, George.
Nifemi, I'm always fascinated by the Lagos standard. I understand this gentleman is from Delta State, and the key ministry is supervisory, has been under the control of a non-Lagos individual for years, and another MBAs. But this is not what happens in many other states. So I will urge Lagos State to keep it up so as to become, to continue to be a role model for the country. I've listened to him attentively, very ambitious budget and good strategy, for implementation. But my only observation is about the role of local governments in this thing. Lagos State created 53 LCDAs, and the LCDAs do not seem to have a role when it comes to budget performance. Is it deliberate? I expect local governments to clean gutters, be in charge of waste management, market, and cleanliness of streets. But if the state government will still see doing this thing, is it that the state government just want to relegate them because of effectiveness? Want him to please enlighten it? Or are they trying to tap local government in Lagos State entirely? Thank you for your good work you are doing.
Thank you very much, George, for your contribution. You quickly want to react to that?
Yes, well, the first thing viewers George needs to understand, and viewers generally, is that the local government is a government on its own, recognized by the Constitution, right? And they have their rules which they must carry out. But one of the pillars around which our strategy is cooperation with governments. And what that means is that cooperating very significantly with the federal government, with other states and local governments, as well as other civic and civil organizations. So when we talked about the early child education, that's a primary, which is typically a local government assignment. But in Lagos, if anything happens to anybody, it affects, that person is a member of the local government, but is also a member of the state, right? And therefore, there's a lot of cooperation going on, actually. So it's not a program that we have done without the local government in charge. And that cooperation is further accentuated that in cabinet, we have a commissioner responsible for local government and community. So there's a voice in the cabinet, but there's a lot of engagement going on. In the budget, there are projects that will happen at the local government areas. We are encouraging the local governments to step up, to improve, but that rub-off only comes as a result of cooperation and mutual engagement.
I think the concern of some would also be the constitutionality of this collaboration. So there are some who would say, well, perhaps it's because Lagos is predominantly a one-party state. That's why we haven't heard much about the leadership of the local government showing their displeasure about state government apparently hijacking some of their projects. But let us quickly touch on what some have called the collaboration that should exist between Lagos and Ogun State in some border areas. So there are some places, close to Ogun, where the roads are terrible, and then people there are confused. Well, maybe this is. Most of them say, well, this is Ogun State, but all of them live in Lagos. How much of collaboration exists between these two states?
Well, it's an interesting federation which we are in, right? And so it wouldn't be right to say it is a hijack. Anything that is for the benefit of the people cannot be a hijack, right? Yes, we are predominantly from the same party.
That's right.
And so that is why we call it a cooperation. It's a collaboration. We cannot step outside the line.
How did I know you were going to go back there?
Just a minute. It would be nice to clarify that, because don't forget that this is a budget, and we're actually spending.
We're going to get back to that in a moment. Yes. Let's take Ade's call. It's calling from Opik in Ogun State. It's one of those border areas we talked about earlier. Good morning, Ade.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I really want to appreciate the guest in the studio this morning. So I want to pick on two things that I observed lately. So I thank you for also coming up with the border issues that have to do with Lagos and Ogun State. So firstly, each time we go, entering into Lagos at this Opik side, that's the Kara Bridge entering into Lagos, you could see a lot of devastated side of this. I wouldn't know if it's Ogun State now or it's Lagos State, where the cows are, the cell cows and those animals there. So I wouldn't know what the collaboration is between Lagos and Ogun State in ensuring that this particular place is well kept, and looking at coming into Lagos being a center of excellence. You can't be coming into such an atmosphere, and at the border, entering into Lagos, what you see first is those that area that is not well kept. So I wouldn't know what Lagos State is doing, to ensure that place is well organized and put in good shape with Ogun State government. Then the second one is within Lagos. So I've noticed, with the PSP trucks, how they mess up the bus stops, some bus stops within Lagos. There was a time, I think last year, that I had to take picture of these PSP trucks that were parked at these newly created bus stops. And, the place was just messy, smelling, disgusting passengers cannot even stand there, to enter into buses. So, and it's been occurring like that. Even till last week, some of these PSP trucks were parked, especially along that Kudirat Abiola way going to Ojota. See those trucks being parked there. And I wouldn't know what Lagos State or the present administration is doing to curtail that.
Thank you for your contribution, Ade. Let's begin with the Kara market. Is it more of a function of aesthetics rather than economics? Where do you take them to really? Is the state government thinking about that right now?
So one of the things we have also said is that our public spaces are important to us. One of the reasons we took the entire airport road was because we felt that as you landed in the country and moved into Lagos, we wanted a site that was deserving of a state of excellence. And so that we have done at great cost, right? And you see it, everybody likes it, but it's a lot of investment. And that is important to us. We've invested we're going to be investing, we said about 29 billion into Loma. There are two issues. One is the investment into equipment, and the other is the training of our people. There's a new GM there which is focused, actually focused on all of this and has its levers on all of them. We'll continue to train our people to ensure that as you solve a problem, you do not create.
So the PSP trucks are back, and are they concerned about just how beautiful the looks are for Lagos?
The PSP trucks are back, right? We are going to be making significant other investments in compactors and the rest to just ensure that those wastes are well managed. You need people, and a lot of people, to deal with the wastes that 22 million people generate. We also need we need a culture change of our people too, so we don't throw things indiscriminately around or use it to block the drains or create black spots all over the city.
All right.
Right? Now, when they talk about the cooperation between Lagos and Ogun, there's a lot of conversation going on in that, and Mr. Governor has said quite a bit about that. We are looking at cooperating, especially in the border towns, cooperating in doing facilities. We are working on the Adine water, for example, and it requires intakes out from the Ogun River, and we need to cooperate with Ogun State to
And this
deal
collaboration
with just
shouldn't
that.
even be an issue since both
It's
states
not.
belong
It's
to the
part
same
of,
party.
and we're doing just that.
Is Ola still there from ISOLO?
Sola is there.
Please go ahead with your contribution. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Alifemi and Mr. Sam. Mr. Sam, having listened to you this morning, I think you sounded a bit different from Governor G. Sanwo-Olu when he came on Economic Hangout, and also different from Mr. Wasiu when it came to this program. This has been the issue of IGR. You talked about the tax collection in Lagos, and you are not too clear. And the implication of what you said is that as if maybe Lagos State is still planning to tax people more, especially people from formal sector. What I think Lagos should do is to look at informal sector, and Nifemi actually suggested something on how we can generate more money from informal sector. But you sounded as if Lagos State does not want to force these people. Maybe probably they are untouchable. But I can tell you, the money Lagos State can generate from this sector is far, far, far more than the tax we are getting from informal sector now. The second point is on the issue of infrastructural development. Now, it is going to be meaningful when we spend wisely on infrastructure. Mr. Governor told us we are going to turn Lagos State to construction sites. Fine. But please, let us spend meaningfully. Most of the roads in Lagos are failed, not only structurally, but even in times of size. A lot of them are failed structurally. But we will not expect Lagos State government to come and patch roads just to resurface. No. A lot of these roads, they are no longer functional when it comes to their sizes. So when you patch roads, when you resurface, and I can tell you, maybe in the next 2 years, we're still going to spend more. Why not let us expand those roads that we're supposed to expand? Because if you take the volume of vehicles in the last 10 years and now, they are not the same.
It's all right.
Well, yes.
I think you made your point. Because of time, let's give him the opportunity to answer. Let's begin with the IGR and the idea of taxing the informal sector.
Okay, if you listened to what I said, my focus really, I was talking about the informal sector. I was talking about the gray markets. I was talking about markets that are not formal.
Absolutely.
And I was saying, and if you also listen to my speech yesterday at the budget analysis, we believe that there are huge opportunities in that area. So the idea is not to necessarily punish the formal sector, but of course everybody needs to pay what is the right tax, whether it's formal or informal. But we see though that there's huge opportunity, as he has said, in the informal sector.
The zero tolerance for potholes. I recall Mr. Governor say that if they had their way, most of the roads would even be interlocking. But what the caller is saying is some of these roads would actually require some more in-depth work than just patching them.
So when you are trying to solve a portfolio of problems, right, and you are going to be deploying resources to those problems, if you've been to London, you see some narrow roads, right, that are patched, right, and they are motorable. There are also new roads that need to be opened up, right? And sometimes you have to do a cost-benefit analysis between opening a new road into new communities, all right, than an existing road, making it motorable, right, or widening it up. So there are a lot of things that are happening. Some of the roads, I mean, we just talked of the airport road. It was expanded massively. The entire Badagry Express Road is being expanded massively. The Agric-Ishawa Road I talked about, or the Gbogbo Road, is being expanded massively. We are looking at the regional roads. We are looking at the roads out of the deep sea port that will be coming up soon. All of those are going to be massive new construction and
let's take this conversation quickly outside Lagos. Okura first called in from Arochukwu in Abia State. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Anitowe. Good morning, Mr. Sam, the Commissioner. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yeah, I want to find out about the only question. This issue of RRR in terms of collecting government revenue, you see, the parastatals are complaining that they don't have in-place account to run this. But when you come back now, you see that your guys run different accounts in their establishment. How do you look at it? And this issue, secondly, the training of teachers is a welcome development. But when you are training them now, is the Lagos State government ready with this modern aids of teaching of the students? Because it's not a question of teaching, coming back, the materials are not there. And you know that JAMB and the SSC is around the corner. So to me, I would suggest to you and to the government of Lagos State, when this type of training comes out, bring it down to long vacation periods during that September period so that the teachers will have enough time to do that training. And thirdly, the Lagos State government, how far have they gone about the students who are in SS3 who will be writing this JAMB come March or April? You know, the government said, the JAMB said they have this national ID card. How far have Lagos State government, how far have they gone about it? And you know, when you come to Lagos, you see that this is Lagos. But when you come to Abia State, you see, welcome to Abia State. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.
Glad to have you. I think it started with the issue of multiplicity of accounts in government agencies that makes it difficult to have this IGR consolidated in a place.
Okay, for Lagos, we run a single treasury account, and that helps. So you do not have that problem of multiplicity of account in Lagos, and I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why we're ahead also of most states. The systems are strong in Lagos, and we keep improving on those systems. He also talked about the teaching aids. When I had said we're going to deploy technology, so this program going on, right, the teachers will come out with technological equipment, with tablets, which will give instructional guides. So it will influence the way they train the students and the kind of interaction, so it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be something that everybody will be deeply excited
Let's take
about.
our last call of the show this morning, and it's from Denmark. Good morning, Tsuji.
Good morning.
Tsuji, you have just 30 seconds, so go ahead with your contribution.
Okay, I would like to speak with the with what is happening on ground with the commissioner.
All right.
Fantastic idea. Beautiful, beautiful presentation. I've been following Lagos State from inception, precisely from '99, and Lagos State is my ideal state. Now, this is my contribution. Quickly, my contribution is this: what is the Lagos State government doing concerning the laboring state? Because I'm outside the country. We know what all other European countries are doing. I'm in Denmark at the moment. When you travel to Sweden, there's a uniformity in development. If Lagos State is being developed and other states are not developing at the same pace as Lagos State, it will become a problem to Lagos State because there will be migration.
All right.
Now, we hardly move to other countries here in Denmark because it's the same, it's a uniform standard of development.
I think you made your point. Let's, I think you have to tweet the answer to this question, but can you do it in 30 seconds?
No, okay, so basically Lagos State is surrounded by Ogun State. So they are our principal partners, and we are taking really deliberate efforts to work together. If there's a problem in Kara here, we have LASMA here. We don't need someone to come from Ogun State to deal with that because it's across the border. But it's also important to know that In terms of the way revenues work in the country, it's where you stay. So if you stayed in Ogun and worked in Lagos, for example, your taxes go to Ogun. Even though you work in Lagos and you put pressure on the society. But as part of our cardinal principles, right, is intergovernmental cooperation. There is so much more you can get just by cooperating with other states and by cooperating with the federal government.
We have to leave it there. Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, Sam Egobe, thank you for coming on the program. It's been really an interesting conversation with you. We wish you the best, and we hope that you make Lagos indeed more prosperous in the new year. That's our show today. We'll be back tomorrow, God willing, with another one. I am Nifebi Oguntoye. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.